On the battlefield of Singapore in 1942, large numbers of Japanese soldiers charged toward British positions on bicycles. At that time, the British Indian soldiers were still casually playing a ball game. Then a gunshot rang out, and all the soldiers froze. When they saw the Japanese forces appear in their field of vision, they turned and ran as fast as they could. Seeing this, the British troops in the rear quickly organized themselves and entered combat mode. Soon, the Japanese forces broke into their main base, but at the same time, they fell right into a trap. British troops had set up mortars in the cornfield behind the base and began shelling their own camp. Smoke and fire filled the air in an instant. Before the Japanese could even find where the British were hiding, they were already bombarded into confusion. In the film, the Indian soldiers fought with incredible bravery, inflicting devastating losses on the Japanese troops. Eventually, they surrounded the Japanese soldiers, forcing them to raise their hands and surrender. But then came a sudden twist. The Indian soldiers received a phone call ordering them to surrender. Since the call came from their British superiors, they had no choice but to obey. They quietly laid down their weapons. The Japanese soldiers, who had just surrendered, were stunned to see this. In an instant, they went from captives to victors. The notoriously brutal Japanese troops now had someone to take their anger out on. They began slaughtering the Indian soldiers. Luckily, at a critical moment, a Japanese officer stepped in and stopped the killing. The next day in Singapore, the Japanese army held a grand entry ceremony. With swords raised high above their heads, they declared victory to the local population. At the back of the procession, the Indian soldiers marched along. They had now become soldiers under Japanese command. To win over the people, the Japanese promised to support Indian independence and help them break free from British colonial rule. Moved by these words, an Indian commander passionately declared that from now on, all Indian soldiers would fight for freedom and for India. Of course, some soldiers still remained loyal to the British and firmly refused to become tools of the Japanese. This led to arguments among the soldiers about which side they should serve. It even escalated into a physical fight. In the end, someone pointed out the truth. No matter which side they served, if they didn't bow their heads, they wouldn't live to see tomorrow. Everyone agreed with this bitter reality. Together, they cheered for the chance to serve a new master. 1 week later, the Indian National Army was officially established. With the dream of defeating British colonizers and gaining independence, they joined Japan's campaign to reverse the war's momentum. By launching the Battle of Imphal, at the border of India and Burma,